Who we both. All right, I think most of us have locked on, and the rest will probably pouring just over the next couple of minutes. Again, good morning and a very warm welcome to this Nordic Council webinar on digitalization. The Nordics go digital. How does it fit with Europe's move to a digital age? My name is Mette Vedsted Vestergaard. I am a journalist and I will be moderating this seminar. So I went over the list of participants, and I can see that some of you were present yesterday for the energy webinar that we ran yesterday. So a warm welcome back to you, and I apologize in advance for any redundancies that may occur during this next short run through of the technicalities. First, however, just a word on the themes and the structure for this meeting. After our opening remarks that I will introduce in just a little bit, we'll cover two overall themes today. The first theme focuses on digitalization, seen from the perspective of industry, consumers, and societal changes. The second theme will narrow in on education and not least on the digital gap that seems to be opening and maybe even have widened with the increased use of virtual classrooms, meeting software that have been taken into use due to the COVID-19 restrictions and lockdown of the schools all over Europe. Each of these themes will be covered by a series of short presentations followed by a panel debate. So it goes for both the panel on the industry and the panel on education that the general aim is to explore and debate which steps are most urgently required and what kind of concrete measures should be taken to speed up digital development on both a Nordic and a European level. During the debates, MPs can raise their hand, their digital hand, that is. You can raise your physical one too. I think I might see that if you turn on your videos, and request for request the floor for comments or questions or reflections or whatever you want to share. The chat will be open for questions from everyone. So will the Q&A. I think if you want to address questions into the panel, use the Q&A and then use the chat more to maybe debate with each other. You can also log on to Facebook. Some of you are watching this on a Facebook stream, and you can also join the chat there and ask questions or share reflections, and we'll make sure that somebody sees that and post those questions to me. So please don't hesitate to send in questions already now. And if there's someone in particular you would like to direct the question to, just write it and I'll make sure that that happens if possible. So as you know, at webinars, we've all been at them for a year now. The schedule is very tight, so please try to keep your remarks and questions within what I would call reasonable length so that everybody gets a chance to talk. And for our introductions, the first introductions, Pyri Niemi and Morten Lykkegaard have kindly agreed to deliver the opening speech of today. Pyri Niemi chairs the Committee on Growth and Development at the Nordic Council and member of the European Parliament. Morten Lykkegaard is both a member of the Committee for Internal Market and Consumer Protection, IMCO, and of the Special Committee on Foreign Interference in all democratic processes in the European Union, including disinformation, also known as the INGE Committee. Pyri, we will start with you. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mette, and thank you for the invitation to this important webinar. Will increased digitalization of our societies and economies generally improve the life of people? Will it increase or decrease the difference between those who live in privileged position and those who are less privileged? Can we maintain our welfare models that we in the Nordic region regard as very important? Increase in digitalization has and will have both negative and positive effects on people and society and welfare in general. It depends on the context, but not only the context, it's also highly dependent on what policies we implement in education, labor market, consumer rights, and in many more policy areas. If we manage to develop and implement the right policies, more people will benefit from the digitalization. A failure in policy development could, on the contrary, lead to more divided societies where the less fortunate feel left behind. Policy can not only be implemented at national or Nordic level. We need to coordinate policies across Europe. Our national systems must be able to talk to each other. Electronic identification serves as a good example for the need for cooperation. Digitalization has an impact both consumer markets and the labor market. They become more integrated and dependent on large companies that operate globally. Therefore, no country can implement effective policies alone. We need to cooperate, not only within the Nordic region, but also at European level. That is why the Nordic Council of Ministers has established a special council of ministers for digitalization and close cooperation with the 3 Baltic states. That is also why the European Commission has made digitalization one of its main priorities until 2024. The international nature of digitalization is why we have arranged this webinar. We are here to share knowledge and experience, so we are better prepared to develop and implement policies that are needed to make digitalization a success for all, not only for the privileged few. So, thank you, and I hope we will have a very good and fruitful discussion today. And I'll leave the floor to Morten. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, colleagues, and greetings from Brussels, where I am right now. Not all by myself, but for sure we could do with some more colleagues here in the European Parliament. We are as affected as you probably are here in this house, and has been for a while now. So we do hope that we can be back together in a short period of time. Let's see how things develop. So I guess we are kind of getting used to this with this virtual webinars, but I prefer to be among you and hope that we can get back to the normal meeting schedules physically soon. I also I had the privilege of being a former member of the council, Nordic Council, so I do appreciate to still have contacts with you, and to be able to hopefully strengthen the cooperation between our institutions. I think that's one of the main reasons I went into the European policy area, the European politics, because I have always thought that the Nordic region has something special to offer to the European community. So that's this. I guess this is yet another area where we can hopefully support the development positively. So thank you very much for having me here and allowing me to say a few introductory remarks. We are, of course, facing a new world, a digital world, which I guess we all know opens an ocean of opportunities for governments and for citizens. But in the deep oceans loom, of course, also dangerous problems. And I think we all know that. The benefits of digitalization has become even more evident, I guess, in the light of the COVID-19 pandemic, which increased dependency of digital solutions. Unfortunately, so has the challenges, I guess, and that's what we're going to discuss today. The EU has taken upon itself, as the former speaker rightly said, has taken upon itself to deal with the potential dangers of this new age. We desperately need to pursue increased trust, transparency, and respect for our fundamental rights. Digitalization has brought positive opportunities, of course, that has essentially made the globe smaller. With the finger of a touchscreen, citizens can communicate with friends and family across the entire world. We can even order our favorite food and presents online at lower price delivered to our doorstep. So that's all fine. This is, of course, positive progress. However, we have to face the problems, and we are surely facing serious threats to our democracy.
Morten,
I guess. Yes.
I'm so sorry for interrupting. There's a sound that is very disturbing. I think maybe you are moving your papers across your microphone, so it's getting a little bit difficult to hear your very good speech.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So if you could keep those still, yeah. Sorry for the interruption.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll try not to move too much. Okay. I think we all know and all was shocked by the pictures of the attempt coup of Capitol Hill as a terrifying example, a clear case on how digital platforms distort reality, which can lead to violence. The line between our virtual and our real world is blurring, I would say. Hate speech, misinformation, and the attempts to manipulate elections are all serious threats. Some tech giants even believe they are greater than states. The recent power game between Facebook and Australia is, I guess, an example in point. The spat over the rights of journalists to receive proper pay for their work illustrates, I guess, this power struggle. The challenges are very high on the European Parliament's agenda, in particular in the INCE committee, which Mette Versted was just referring to. You don't ask me what this INCE stands for. It's French. I wouldn't know, but in our local lingo, it's called the INCE committee. But it's about foreign interference in the democratic processes, including mis and disinformation. And I'm co-chairing this committee. So we are in the process in this committee of now mapping and monitoring what's actually going on out there. And I think it's a very valuable committee that for sure will come up with hopefully some good ideas and proposals to maybe new legislation, but at least some kinds of ideas on how to proceed with the big tech giants and other actors. In addition, we are facing threats to the single market and the safety of European consumers. The selling of dangerous and or fake products are being mediated via the online platforms. These online marketplaces are dominating the digital sphere and squeezing new potential smaller competitors out of the markets, and we are looking at this very seriously now in the IMCO committee, the Internal Market Committee in this House. This is, of course, not in the interest of us all as consumers and citizens, nor is it in the interest of innovation and businesses. Finally, threats in cyberspace are becoming even more evident and dangerous. With our increased dependency and connectivity on digital tools, it's essential that these tools are secure and reliable, and that the EU is a front runner on cybersecurity. I can just add that I've just been the rapporteur on a special legislative file on cybersecurity, and hopefully we also will be able to renew this whole area of cybersecurity with a new legal framework. We urgently need to address the threats. We are creating new opportunities for Europe, but also we will come up with a range of legislation, proposing a range of legislation. The Commission has proposed a Digital Service Act, the so-called DSA, and a Digital Market Act known as the DMA. The DSA aims at handling online content issues, whereas the DMA addresses the competition issues posed by the tech giants. Both represent important steps to make sure that European and democratic values are respected. The EU cannot accept to lag behind in this competition, and we need European solutions, I guess, also globally. In the European Parliament, we are welcoming the ambitions laid out in these proposals. We are looking at them very closely right now, and we are just in the phase now of clearing out what committees have the competences in which area. Specifically, the mechanisms of countering illegal goods and content is good news for the consumers and the internal market, I guess. And so is the aim of strengthening the public oversight of very large online platforms. The DMA provisions to address gatekeepers and introduce tech giants to be more transparent. These are important steps. We need to ensure the opening of the digital market in Europe. Digital entrepreneurs and innovation needs to have a safe haven in Europe. This is how we secure benefits for consumer choice and business prosperity. Designing a proper online environment will lead to more opportunities for European citizens and businesses. The key is, of course, safe, trustworthy, and healthy competition. Finally, the EU is proposing updated legislation to increase cybersecurity, as I just mentioned. In this, the EU is aiming for a higher level of harmonization of security to better shield people, businesses, and institutions from cyber threats. All of these initiatives are, of course, balancing acts. I guess we will also discuss this today. Any action that EU moves to advance in the world of digitalization must be with the aim of ensuring a global and open internet and the freedom of speech, of course. What is particularly noteworthy about the challenges is that they are transnational, of course. Therefore, they demand transnational solutions. For this reason, it's important that the work we do with like-minded states in the EU, it is vital for our citizens that we ensure the safeguarding of our values. And in this respect, and this will be my final remark, the Nordics have, in my opinion, having a particularly much to contribute with. As a region, we have demonstrated an ability to reap the benefits of a more digital world while preserving our democratic values. And I think this is a very important point. The Nordics should have a strong voice, in my opinion, in addressing and adjusting the direction of the EU. And I'm sure that we will be able to do that if we continue this dialogue. The Nordics have much to contribute in this regard. I hope that today's webinar may inform and bring forward new Nordic perspectives. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Morten, for these important points. And we sure wish that we could all be together in the same room too. That day will hopefully come. Our next speaker is also speaking from Brussels. It is Werner Steng, who serves as cabinet expert on digitalization on the cabinet of the Digitalization Commissioner and Vice President of the Commission, Margrethe Vestager. Europe Fit for the Digital Age is one of the highest priorities and most ambitious aims for the current European Commission. So, Werner Steng, from your position, what would you say are, should we say, the most significant contributions to in the Commission's work program aiming to achieve this very goal?
Yeah, thank you very much for this introduction, and good morning, everybody. Thanks also for inviting me. Morten made my life pretty easy because he covered a lot of ground that I would have covered as well, so I can be pretty brief, I think. I would just say a few words on our overall digital strategy to answer your question, and probably a couple of words on how COVID may have affected this or changed some priorities, if you want. The first thing is really, how do we get Europe fit for the digital age? We already before COVID, we came out with our digital strategy, which sort of is really the intellectual framework within which everything is happening. And we call that shaping Europe's digital future. And that's important in terms of terminology, because we are convinced that we can shape it. We are not just exposed to it. We don't have to adapt all the time. But we think Europe has the strength and the will, also the political will, to shape digital in a way that actually makes it work for us, for citizens, for businesses. Morten referred to the dangers. Of course, a lot of legislation is always addressing the downsides, and I'll come to that. But at the same time, we also try, of course, to strengthen Europe in the digital world. So there's also the opportunities that are in this for European industry, for European citizens, because obviously, as Morten also said, this is always a balancing act. You need to address the dangers while not undermining the positive side of it and the innovation potential and all the good things that the digital transformation has brought to all of us. Now, the three big priorities, if you want, first are really on technology, where we need to strike a balance between promoting digital technologies in Europe, make us stronger, make us more resilient, make us less dependent on technology developed elsewhere, but at the same time addressing the downsides. So technology with a purpose, as my boss tends to say. So we do promote artificial intelligence, for instance. We do promote the sharing of data in the interest of our economies. But at the same time, we're trying to address the downsides. So while we promote sort of ecosystems of excellence in Europe, by investing even more now after COVID, member states are spending money under the recovery facility also on digital technologies, improving research, improving cooperation across member states. We also address the risks. For instance, on artificial intelligence, we will soon come out with a legal proposal to make it trustworthy, if you want, to address high-risk applications that may undermine our fundamental rights or put our safety at stake. Same if we promote data sharing, of course, we want to make sure that legitimate interests in those data are protected, that data are not used for other purposes than for which they are shared, and so on and so forth. The second one is about markets, and also more to refer to this. It's both to enable companies of all sizes in all sectors to benefit from the digital market and take part in it, protect them also against unfair competition, mainly, of course, with regard to the very large gatekeeper platforms. That's the Digital Markets Act that Morten has referred to. But at the same time, make sure that consumers, when they go online, that they are safe, that they are not exposed to unsafe toys when they order them on an online platform that may poison their kids, that they're not exposed to child sexual abuse material, to illegal hate speech, and all of that. The third dimension, the third big priority, is about democracy. It's about our societies. It's about empowering citizens, giving them greater control over their digital lives, over their data, how this data is shared and used, protect our democracies also in terms of social media platforms, sharing of information, content moderation systems used by big platforms where only they decide who sees what type of content is deleted or not, disinformation, spreading disinformation about COVID. Of course, also these events in the US when Twitter, Facebook shut down the outgoing president. You may agree or not with that decision, but already it shows the big power that those platforms have in deciding who can do what in our world. Now, COVID, in our opinion, has only further accentuated all of that. So our strategy, we feel, is as valid today as it was a year ago. Morten already referred to the increasing dependencies. We're all now much more digital than we were a year ago, but that also means that everybody depends even more on digital. You can only sell stuff anymore in terms of crisis if you go online. You can also buy things only online anymore. We teach our children remotely. We have this conference remotely. So in all aspects of economic and social life, this dependency has increased, which means that the inclusion element has become also much more important still. Because if you're not part of it, then you are excluded from large parts of social and economic life. So how can we make sure that all companies, all citizens really can take part in this digital world? Also, the resilience argument has been reinforced. Dependencies, supply chains, and I'm almost done. So that certainly has also been accentuated through COVID, and that's also where the investment efforts will now be reinforced, both at the community level and at member state level. How can we become more resilient? And last but not least, all these issues around market power and consumer protection, obviously, which we are now discussing with Parliament and the member states, even more important today if everybody sells and buys online and consumes information online. So with this, I would want to end my introduction.
Thank you for that, Herstein, and you will be available for further questioning and reflections on the Q&A a little bit later. You can already now ask questions to Mr. Steng. From Brussels, we move back to the Nordic countries because we'll now have a closer look at how the Nordic countries are facilitating digitalization and maybe dive into the role of the Nordic Corporation a little bit. So please welcome Finland's Minister of Local Government, Sirpa Paatero, who's also, of course, a member of the Nordic Council of Ministers on digitalization. So do we have Sirpa online here? I thought I saw her, but it seems she is not hearing us. Let's see if we. Sirpa is without her video, but she should be able to hear us. Okay, I suggest that we move forward a little bit. So, because I know we have Rege Seberg with us. Rege, if you are ready to do your presentation, can you just turn your video on so I can see you, because then we'll just switch you two around. Thank you, Rege Seberg. Let me just do an introduction of you. There are hardly any limits to the promises of digitalization when it comes to a European industry, because this is probably where technologies where machine learning and robotics and Internet of Things and data analysis and so on and so forth is set to prove its value for real, which is one of the side of the case that we have just heard the former speakers address. But the question is to what extent industry is leveraging on the opportunities generated by the increasing digitalization so far, and also what it will take to take it to the next level. So these are among the questions that I know interest our next speaker, who is Rege Seberg. Rege Seberg is head of digitalization at the Confederation of Danish Industry. And I also want to add that until very recently, like it was actually the director of the Danish Agency of Digitalization. And for that reason, she also has a very solid overview of the public sector as well. Rege, thank you for being ready on a little short notice here, and a very warm welcome.
Thank you very much, Mette, and thank you very much for the invitation for speaking today. I think, Nikolai, could you put on my slide, please? Thank you. The Nordics are today no doubt leading in the digital transformation of businesses and governments. This is, however, not something we should take for granted, since the game is changing with a new industrial policy, stronger focus on digital sovereignty, and the developing in general of EU fit of the digital age. We should preserve our way of doing business and welfare, but we must also engage more and deeper in the European priorities. And doing it jointly we will have a greater impact in Brussels. Therefore, while maintaining a Nordic perspective on well-functioning markets and a rule-based economy open for all companies who observe the rules, we should firstly make sure that a digital, responsible and green transition will guide European policies and investments, not protectionism, and we should make sure that legislation is not hindering the digital opportunities. And in that sense, the Schrems II ruling is an example where we and the Commission on one side urge for the use of cloud solutions, and the other side is making it very difficult in doing so because of the requirements to businesses and governments when data is leaving the EU. The recovery package is, on the other hand, a fine example, and we should demonstrate our capabilities here and deliver on these priorities. Secondly, we have to actively rework for the new data economy and participate in creating data spaces. The Nordics have a profound history for working with data and a strong public sector we can use in this regard. When the data economy will be unfolded with the 9 new data spaces, we should engage our companies to actively participate in creating data spaces, for instance, in the Green Deal or within health tech, while using our capabilities in public-private partnerships. We should not just leave this possibility to other countries. Finally, We must actively engage Nordic companies in the EU priorities to seek influence and funding, for instance, in the Digital Europe program and in business alliances under the new industrial strategy recovery program and so on. Nordic companies have a tendency to be reluctant to seek funding from the EU. Maybe it's because of the lack of knowledge of the possibilities, but it's also because of the red tape. And perhaps this time is now time to change this perspective and engage the businesses more in doing so. We and our businesses hold the tech solutions for many of the challenges facing Europe, but also for the rest of the world. For example, in the green transition and in the health sector. So more cooperation between public and private sector and between the Nordics and EU combined with a willingness to invest in the digital transformation are key components to find the right solutions in the coming years. Thank you. That's for my opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Rikke, and yes, you will also be available for questions and reflections on the Q&A that is approaching now. I don't see that the minister is yet here, so we will move on to our next speaker, who is Mia-Petra Kumpula-Natri, the Vice Chair of the European Parliament's Committee of Artificial Intelligence in the Digital Age, also called AIDA. Now, there was a little stronger connection between the name and the actual title of the committee. From this position, she will, in her upcoming presentation, offer us her view on Europe's digital transformation and maybe even deep dive a bit into concrete examples of digitalization that may or may not lie ahead of us. That could be, for example, a European eID. And if she won't do that here, we'll just have to ask her about that later. So please welcome member of the European Parliament, Mia-Petra Kumpula-Natri.
Thank you so much. Everything's working? Yes, I also had to change the computer to be able to connect. I couldn't get the camera on at my office. I'm also exceptionally in Brussels this sunny morning. Isolated in the office and home anyway, but good to be back home virtually. And then also I hope we could get Sirpa speaking here, as I was not going for the one very important example from the Nordic phase is that we also remember that the public sector needs to do the digitalization and innovations, and that is not often taken on board in the European discussion. It's more like how to make the innovation, how to make more companies, how to make the economy to flower, and then how can we compete the US and China. And I think we in Nordics understand that also the public services need to be on board. If we remain like in the 90s services and only the private services will gain the benefits of the digitalization, that will be not good for the welfare society. So it is also not anymore the discussion whether you put the robots instead of the nurses, but it is how the AI and how the digitalization will help so many different sectors of life. And I'm very happy and hope that Sirpa could bring also ideas. And we do have the Nordic cooperation, the Nordic smart governance, which also intends to enable SMEs to share the data automatically. So my work, just to introduce me, if I will get the new friends here to work later, I work for the AIDA, not Verdi Opera, but AI in Digital Age as a vice chair, as mentioned here. And I also was the rapporteur, or am the rapporteur for the data strategy. And that passed the IMCO committee with a great majority, ITRE committee, the Technological and Innovation and Energy committee last week, and we will vote it in a couple of weeks' time in the plenary. And that is also trying to have the big picture where we want to go. And then we all understand now more than a few years ago that to reach the possibilities that AI offers to us, we need to have a data to be used for training AI, and data which is not biased and is good quality data So I think we don't want to see the recruitment processes with AI help if it always dominates the old structure that men leads in some sectors and women are recruited in other sectors. So this biased data should not be then guiding us wrong, when I still tend to think that AI is a lot of the helping with its processes. It can handle the data, the final decision that still much will be carried on by the algorithm engineers, or then even the doctor or the final decision maker. So for these Nordic possibilities, I think we can think about the triangular, where we have 3 corners, and one is the connections and connectivity, one is the skills, and the third one is the data, and AI lies on that one. So we cannot have one separate on each other, or of course we can make connections and then just use the services provided from the California, for example, or then we can create a whole ecosystem that also different sectors can benefit digitalization, and then we need skilled people in different sectors to understand the data and understand the digitalization and possibilities. Connections in the European countries are improving, and then Europe is also pushing a lot. Also, this 20% of the 750 billion recovery and resilience fund is targeted for the improving not only the connections but also the skills and capacity. And I very much agree with the previous speaker that I do want to see the Nordic companies cross the sector, not looking only the ICT, but looking the different sectors, how they can benefit from the digital EU and other EU programs. Also the Connected European facility that I'm in charge of in my party will give some money for the digital infrastructure, Digital Europe for the knowledge side much more. And then all these data spaces that we are now creating should be then our possibility to come from the little bit smaller countries in the population, but big in knowledge, to reach the European cooperation. So really to make this data available for companies as is it done with the BSI directive will be now continued with the DGA. I heard Morten earlier mentioned here, and also we heard it from Werner, that DSA, DMA are very important to regulate the existing big tech. But then always we should mention that there is a third piece of legislation, which is DGA, that is an enabling one, that how do we do the data governance so that it is respecting our values, and then it is the trusted way we can share the data. I'm very much emphasizing, and in my report too, that data access should be also targeted. So it's like one piece of puzzle still missing, and I know Commission is working on that. I know there's anti-lobbying on that as well. So it's also that how the value created by the digital or data ecosystem is then created. If you are owner of a smaller company, is your duty only to share the data with the bigger ones, always the bigger one winning? Or should there be ways that some value creation is also helping you, and that's also the part of the motivation, you want to share the data and get more innovative solutions that your company also can benefit from. So all these goes together one-on-one. Maybe I finish mentioning that when I mentioned a couple of times values, it is really the thing that we are now in the middle of. I'm also working in the INTA committee, which is the International Trade Committee, and we do have the ongoing negotiation joint statement initiative in the WTO that 86 countries now negotiate the rules for the e-commerce. And it is, of course, the online goods and signatures and so, but it is also the data flows. And Europe has benefited a lot for the data flows, and we try to keep the system open still, so we can internationally benefit from the data flows with the strict rules on the privacy. And that's why we now also have to look carefully, the UK, USA, do they have the legislation in place? But when I mentioned the global context, it is not self-evident that every continent is happy having the democracy working as a core. So now when we say that the democratic market economy should find each other and work, because now if we say that we compete with the Chinese AI tools and innovations they are doing, but then they are basing it on their own systems, and it is not always that they respect democracy or privacy. And that's why I think that the European, I finish here, I see Sirpa here, then that the European values needs to be on the core, and the Nordic countries have a lot to say when we talk about the open societies, democracies, and values. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mia Petra. And there are a few points you didn't get to make. We will do those later on the Q&A. I'll make sure to pass you the floor there, because we did get a hold through to Finland's Minister of Local Government, Sirpa Paatero, and Sirpa unfortunately has to go to another meeting very soon. So I'll just, without further ado, pass the floor to you.
Thank you very much, and I'm very confused about these problems with the computer. But still, we are now here, and you have our slides there, and we can start. Maybe the next slide is the best one, because you know that we are the Nordic countries, and we are forerunners in this kind of natural partners and cooperation in the field of digitalization. You can see that in the slide, this DESI index, Finland, Sweden, and Denmark scored the highest rights and followed very near to Estonia also.
Sirpa,
yeah.
There is a huge echo and some feeding going on with your microphone. Do you think, I saw somebody was setting you up with the technicalities. Do you think you can fix that? I'm afraid people almost can't hear you.
Okay, is it better now?
Yeah, I think you need to turn off your speaker, maybe.
Okay.
Your loudspeaker. I think it's feeding into your microphone.
Okay. Yeah. We can try. Is it better now?
No.
No. So I'm not sure. Sorry about that, because we have so many equipment here at the same time, and we try to deal with the iPad, with this huge system, and with this computer. But at least if I can't speak, so much, you can see maybe also the next slide. Maybe it helps you, because you know that we are the Nordic Digital Declaration we have made. If I said only these couple of words, we are the leader of these next 4 years, and these main objectives you can see in the slides. You know that we have this Nordic Council minister, and Finland is the president this year, and I think that we are in a good way to cooperate with all the countries. Nordic, maybe the next slides. I think that, yeah. We have these kind of strategic areas of digital mobility and digital innovation and accountability, and that's what we are doing here at the moment. And of course, developing electronic ID is the question in all the Europe, and mostly here in our Nordic countries with the Baltic countries. We strongly agree that we need that, and so that one is not controlled by technology science, but so that users are controlling that. And that is what we are promoting here, and hopefully we can manage that. And of course, next week we will have this kind of meeting with the Nordic Council Minister, digitalization meeting here, and the team Green Digital Transition, and we are discussing about the possible actions of the minister meetings. And hopefully in autumn we will meet together, but now of course with this Zoom. And of course the COVID crisis is stimulating the growth of these digital solutions. And many people who doesn't before use digital services have now used them daily, or they also have worked with them. And we are making the, okay, yes. And you still hear me because I have an assistant here working with the equipment. Of course, we have also this Berlin Declaration, and all our EU member states has agreed that. And Commission has launched 2020 to European Digital Decade, and of course we agree that too. And then we have this Nordic Baltic cooperation contributes all these goals of course in the whole EU, and we also like to be a member of making and thinking about EU legislations and promote digitalization in many areas through the European Union. I'm sorry about these problems with our equipment, but at least that said, Nordic and Baltic countries will find it important that the digital transformation and is inclusive and promoted with the common values. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sirpa Patro, and I am so sorry about the sound problems that we were experiencing here. I think there was a problem in the minister's computer, and you know that happens. With that, I would like to invite you all to ask your questions, state your comments. Please do so on our Q&A, or raise your hand. That is the digital raised hand that we are talking about. I would like to start with Atis Lyons, who has raised his hand. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I still haven't gone to a hairdresser.
You still haven't been to the hairdresser.
No, I only opened on if there is on Monday.
Well, you're going to have to sign up.
On in Australia. Thank you. We all know what happened in Australia. That was a big event for Facebook and Google. I would like to know from the EU Commissioner or anybody who knows how the EU is reacting to it, because this is, I think, a milestone. We must take this into account, because I think Australia only won partially, only partially. That's my question.
That is your question, and who do you want to address this question to?
Well, I think his name, well, the first name was Morten, was he, from the European Commission?
Morten is a member of European Parliament.
Well, okay, him or anybody else actually who knows.
Werner Steng is on the cabinet of Veste. We might want to address this question to Werner Steng. Werner Steng, do you want to answer this question?
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, of course, and it's a highly topical question, obviously. Just one of those illustrations of the huge power that platforms have obtained, as I said before, in all aspects of our economy and society. And that's exactly why we are taking the measures that we are taking. In this particular context, of course, it is more the copyright framework that was negotiated and agreed in the last mandate, and which is being implemented by member states as we speak. And that had exactly that purpose of making sure that publishers would be properly remunerated if their content is used on platforms or monetized on platforms. So that was our, even in advance of the Australians, that was the European approach to it. So far, I think only France and the second country have actually implemented it. And in France, there's already the first agreement struck between France and Google, I think it was. So you see already it has teeth, and it will lead to the same result. But really more broadly speaking, because I also saw a question, a Q&A, more generally speaking, in relationship with tech giants like Facebook, how we can improve that. I think it's not so much about relationships anymore in terms of talking or co-regulatory or self-regulatory activity. We have really started to regulate these relationships. Copyright was one thing, the Digital Markets Act is another, the Digital Services Act yet another, because it's just this fact that you have those huge gatekeeper platforms, which are private companies, obviously, but they have occupied a role in our society that gives them so much power, yet they are a private regulator. So we need to restore democratic oversight over such activities that affect all of us. So this is probably the big narrative that is behind all of our platform-related initiatives. Make sure that decisions that affect the public at large are subject to rules that are decided by parliaments, by heads of state and government, because we need to regain democratic control over these things.
Thank you.
Good. We can't hear you.
Oh, there we go. I too have troubles with that. I'm so sorry. We've had a question through our Facebook live stream. I'm looking above my screen now because I have it back there. And the question is, it's from Hannah Carriere. How is the legislation on European level improving in taking into account the needs of the public sector in digitalization? Or is it still just a specific approach from the side of the Nordic countries? And now that the minister left, I think we have with us Anna-Maja Karjalainen. Anna-Maja, would you like to answer this question?
Just a second. Now I'm online, obviously.
Yes.
If I understood correctly, the question was a new way to the EU regulation and the Nordic regulation. So,
Anna-Maja, your connection is very bad. I think you probably need to reboot, or well, try to take it again. Let's see if it got better.
I understood that the question is more regards the EU regulation than the Nordic regulation.
Yeah. I'm so sorry, Anna-Maja. I think you need to reboot your connection because we can't hear you. You're lagging, and it's impossible to hear. I want to draw on the experience of Rikke Seeberg. Rikke, is there any chance that you want to talk a little bit about this question? I'm going to repeat it if you are still with us. The question is, how is the legislation on European level improving in taking into account the needs of the public sector in digitalization? Or is it still just a specific approach from the side of the Nordic countries? And then afterwards, I'm going to ask if any of the members of parliament that we have with us would like to answer this.
I can try to give an answer to that. Actually, sometimes it's hard on the public sector of the Nordic countries when the EU legislation is put forward, because the Nordic countries are so developed in the terms of the digitization of the public sector. And that's why it's very important that the Nordic countries is integrated and working with the EU Commission in when the regulation is formed. And that's because when you very advanced example, we have in Denmark, there's an EID for all citizens. And if you're going to put forward the legislation for a new for new EU EID, it has huge implications in a national matter. Another example is all the regulation coming on mutual recognition on citizen services, because of the Nordic countries has a lot of digital services already providing for the businesses and the citizens. It's very important that the new legislation coming from EU on the mutual recognition is not going to be a barrier, but is based on the same standards that the developed countries is already having. So now I'm talking on behalf in my former position, but but that can be a challenge. So it's very important that the Nordic countries has a big influences and is working very hard with the forming of the regulation, so that we're not seeing the new legislation coming from the EU as a barrier, but more as a provider and a help for the further digital transformation of the public sector. And then they just met I think Morten Lykkegaard wants to have the floor. He asked for it a few times.
Oh, really? I unfortunately don't see his raised hand, but Morten Lykkegaard, I would very much like your comment on this.
Well, I was actually trying to answer the question raised about the Australian situation, since
yes,
I was brought in there, and I do want to address this, because I think it's as also Werner said, is a very topical question, which involves me and some of my colleagues very much at the moment. So I think it would be a good idea also to address this in this forum. The thing is that I've been following this very closely since the Australians went into their problems with Google and Facebook, and I was very supportive of it. And as a matter of fact, just for your information, when we had the commissioner, Mr. Breton, in our committee a few days ago, I asked him specifically to give some form of guarantee that we will have European solidarity on this question with the Australians, because I think this case illustrates just how powerful these tech giants are, and how they are able to make pressure on even bigger states. So coming from Denmark as a smaller state, where this discussion is also ongoing, and where the Minister for Culture has actually intervened a few days ago, we will never ever be able to make it on our own as a state if we wanted to take the fight with for example, Google and Facebook. So that's why it's key. It's absolutely key that we come to some kind of common European understanding on this issue. And this is also talking to a broader picture. It was also mentioned by Werner that this is a bigger narrative about how we are, as Europe, as a European continent, are dealing with these giants. So this is not only a case about. I would agree that this is of course about copyright. The core of the issue is about copyright, but the bigger picture, the bigger narrative is about how are we dealing now with these giants. So that's why it's politically very interesting. Can I just add to that it's not as simple as just a matter of us versus Facebook in this? Because what I realized just a few days ago is that if you look at the Danish situation, the media is not just media. We have bigger media, we have smaller media, we have traditional media, we have online media. And depending on who you are asking, they have very different answers towards this issue. And on how to deal with this. Some of the bigger actors in the Danish media landscape want to have some kind of Australian solution to this. But smaller media, the ones that are depending on Facebook as a platform to make innovation, they want the Danish state to make some kind of collective bargaining, collective agreement. In order not to be caught in between and being, shut off from Facebook or Google, and by then missing their business opportunities. So the picture is not very clear. It's not as simple as just either or. You need to go into much more into this. I have a dialogue now with Facebook and Google about this, and we are trying to find out what could be the European answer to this, because on the one hand, we need a European solidarity and a European common answer. On the other hand, we need to be sensitive to the diversity that we're also facing in this area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Morten, for a lengthy answer. And I want to say that if you wish to take the floor, please raise your digital hand. It is on the bottom of your screen, and it's a little hand. It says raise hand. In that way, I am able to see when everybody does so. I know that Anna-Maja Karjalainen has asked to take the floor again. Yes, are you still with us, Anna-Maja?
I'm not sure if I'm with you, but I think it's Mia Petra Kumpula-Natri who actually asked the floor from you at the moment. So I believe Rikke from Denmark already answered the question.
It is, in fact, Anna-Maja who was trying to take the. Yes, Mia Petra, are you with us? Do you read us or do you hear us?
I am. I do. I see everything's fine.
Good.
So good. Thank you. For your reactions for the debate for the Australian case, I think it was very good that there were somebody who really took up the question of the trustworthy media and then the news with some responsibilities. And then also we know the facts. I have the figures in my mind from US where in 10 years, 70% of the businesses in the media side lost their advertisement income, and then they halved the number of the journalists. We do have figures from different European countries in Finland, and so you know that making them it's more difficult. And then we can have all kind of messages, and which will disturb our democracy. So I will not go deeper, but then also say, as Werner said, copyright is not implemented yet. And yes, Parliament was lobbied so much and so hard, and Facebook and Google, they were so rude. And now they say it's good that we will have some legislation, and still behind the scenes, they are really attacking Werner's boss and our colleagues and us too. So we have to really make the value-based decisions here. May I a little bit challenge the Rikke's opinion on the not needing new European solutions because we have so good Nordic and countrywide? I do not buy this argument too much, because we do have the European internal markets and freedom to move. And then actually you cannot fight these big tech alone, not even Nordic countries together, not even public Nordic countries together. And Australia just could do it, but they are 70 million. We are 466 million when we put our effort together. And yes, we do have a legislative institutions and possibilities. So I really count on that. And then also for the EID, I don't know why shouldn't we really try to do something very progressive here, that when I want to log in, when I want to log into some services, nowadays it asks whether you want to log in with a Google or whether you want to log in with a Facebook. And these are the only chances. They don't say that this Danish EID would be helpful there, but they are having these two big tech. And then when I log in, why do I have to give them my information to whom I like? Did I like Morten's post, or did I was a little bit more biased for the Biden than Trump? And all my memories and so it is very harsh existing. So if we could do EID that minimizes the information needed, whether I'm a Finn, whether I'm a European, whether I'm 18, whether I'm wanting to do this or that. And if we could do something like that, it would be great. So I'm looking forward the EID to be something a little bit more than just having the identity that we are having national wide, and we can just log in the national things. Yes, there have been for long European regulation that they should work all over. You were asking earlier about the EID.
Yes, I was, and I'm so sorry to cut you off. And thank you very much for bringing this on. And I'm also very sorry about the technical issues that we've had for this first theme that has meant that we have not gotten to address all the questions that came in. I will try to direct them all to the relevant presenter so that they will know that you asked these questions and maybe open a dialogue with you. It's 11 o'clock now, so we do have to move on to our second theme. Again, feel free to debate these questions in the chat. I will mainly be looking at the Q&A, and please direct the questions that you want directed to the presenters in the Q&A, and then you can talk to each other about these themes on the chat. There are a lot of competent people gathered here, so this might come in useful now that we didn't get to cover all issues of the first theme. Now we will move into the second theme of today, education and the digital gap. And I wanna say that I think 12 months ago, I may have been on a Zoom conference like this with sound trouble, maybe once or twice, maybe never. I don't know the exact date of my first one. I hadn't had many team meetings, and let alone my children, who may have or may not have done FaceTime calls, but that was it. Now back in school again, they long for their virtual classroom. They like the quaint coziness of their home, and they say, "Oh, we miss our team classroom," and it's the most natural thing. They have thrived and benefited from entering into the digital school age. However, many children haven't. In a survey published by the Danish Evaluation Institute just little over a week ago, it stuck out very clearly that especially children that were that are challenged already on both the academics and their general well-being in school, have had a pretty hard time during lockdown and during the digital classroom that came with the lockdown. So, and I want to welcome Bertel Haarder, President of the Nordic Council, and also a very experienced Danish MP and minister. In fact, I want to say Bertel has served as the Danish Minister of Education for 15 years altogether. And on top of that, also, I think 7 or 8 years as in other ministries. Welcome, Bertel.
Thank you, Mette.
I want to start by asking you, we talked about this new survey from EVA yesterday. Are you surprised that that the increased digitalization of the school sector seems to have created or maybe even widened the gap between the students that thrive in school and the students that don't?
No, I'm not surprised at all.
Mm-hmm.
And
why?
All those pupils working at home, those who have the IT competences, the privileged children, they have really learned a lot during lockdown. But those who are left behind have probably not learned a lot. So there's a lot to catch up with. And by the way, we have also a digital gap when we look at the old part of the population. And that's a problem for the welfare state. And I think in parts of the education sector, we also have a digital gap between students and teachers, where teachers don't have the same competencies as the students. But we have to live with that. We have to work with that. It can be solved by education. And the same is the case for cybercrime. In the Nordic Council, we have this new report from the former Icelandic Minister Björn Bjarnason about cybercrime, how we all must be educated in order to protect ourselves and also protect our companies and our societies against cybercrime. So a lot of education has to be done to bridge those gaps and to prepare us for the future. Because my thing is that
Can I just ask? We often talk about in the Nordic countries that we have very good education systems, and we are good at educating pupils. That is what we do. That is what we can do. Do you think we have the right tools to solve this problem, to mend this gap that we're talking about here? Because I mean, education, well, right now, education means further teaching in virtual classrooms, which might even widen the gap further.
It's a very good question, because the world will never be the same. I mean, the corona crisis may be over, but schools will never be the same. And I also hope that we will learn from those experiences that we have had, because in the future, pupils and students should be part-time in classrooms and part-time at home working in the digital way, because there's so many advantages. And I will add that in the Nordic Council and in the Nordic Baltic cooperation, we certainly also have benefited from this digital shock we have got, and we will benefit from that in the years to come. So it's not bad altogether. Some of it has been a very helpful, useful exercise.
Mm-hmm. But if it also has created this gap, what perspectives does that rise for the Nordic countries when we're looking at the digital future ahead of us?
First of all, we should exchange examples of best practice, because the Nordic countries, and I will add also the Baltic countries, we are so much alike, we have so much in common that we can really learn from each other's solutions. So exchange of best practice is very important. But of course also that we have a common security system, and that we exchange teaching materials and teaching methods. There's a lot to do. And by the way, I like very much what the European Commission is doing in this area. I think a lot of it is very useful and thoughtful.
Mm-hmm. 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 Well, thank you very much, Bertel. I know you will linger on here so you can participate in the Q&A that we have coming up after the rest of the presentations on this theme. So thank you for now. Because we are going to move forward to Isidro Lazo Ballesteros, because the European Commission has proposed a new action plan for digital education 2021 to 2027. And Isidro Lazo Ballesteros is a cabinet expert on education on the cabinet Gabriel, as you can guess, the cabinet of Commissioner for Innovation, Research, Culture, Education, and Youth, Maria Gabriel. Isidro Lazo Ballesteros, could you tell us a little bit about the content of the action plan and also touch on why it is so important?
Well, first of all, I thank you for inviting the Commissioner Gabriel. Unfortunately, she could not be here with you today, but I'm happy to replace her. And certainly the EDAP, the European Digital Action Plan, is one of our main initiatives in this area of digital education. We realize that it's not only important to have highly skilled in the area of digital to be able to work in tech startups, etc., but also very important to have the basic skills to be able to be part of this new world, because it will be needed for all the future generations to be part of the society and of the economy. And it's not only the future generation, we are talking also here about upskilling and reskilling of the current generations. We are with what we saw at the end of the 2008-2009 financial crisis is that the cities recover from the crisis using technology and innovation. This has had strong positive benefits for many, but has also left behind a lot of people who didn't have the skills to benefit from this. We see this perfectly now in the rural areas. All across Europe, I came up from a meeting with the other 27 cabinets, talking about this, about how the rural areas in the last recovery from the last crisis, financial crisis, they were left behind, because what was good for cities was this innovation technology has been very negative for the rural areas, but you see also for many parts of the cities where people who is not skilled enough to take advantage of the innovation and the new tech. So we have seen pockets of populations in all the big cities as well that they have not been able to reskill. And the introduction of robotics, the introduction of all the software and hardware robots has replaced a lot of workers, but we have not been able to reskill or upskill them. So this is a big challenge. And talking about as you see, my area of expertise is not education, as says in the program, is innovation. And that's why I'm always so passionate about things. But in the area of education, I can talk not only because I'm very much aware of the European Digital Action Plan, but also as a father. And Bertel had mentioned before that he was not surprised about the digital education widening the gap between the children. And I have 6 kids, so I can become an expert on these things now with all of them here. Today they are all here at home remotely working. So it's not only a matter of the ethical competence of the student, or the kids, or the parents. It's also that I am working in the service sector, so I am at home all day. I can be keeping an eye on them, what they are actually doing, because nowadays with the Microsoft Teams, they can be listening to the teacher, but they can be also sending messages to the classmates and not doing what they have to do. So you have to be here looking at them. What happens with those taxi drivers or those who are working in factories? What is happening with those kids? Who is taking care that they are really attending the classes, who are really, so I'm really worried about the impact of this pandemic, this 1 year or more, that many people, in particular, not my kids or the kids of those who are here in the room today, but those who are not here, those who have to be in the either driving, the lorry drivers, etc. What is going to happen with those kids? So I think that the digital education can be very beneficial for example, rural areas, and in the Nordics, you are very rich on these natural areas, but we have to see how we can keep an eye on those kids whose parents are not there, and I will not be here. If they are going to, as Berta said, in the future, they're going to be part-time here at home. And most likely, I don't know, the Commission will allow me to do that. So if I am not here, it will be the thing. I don't know how we can ensure that there will be, I'm sure we will find solution, because the good things with innovation is that and the startups in particular, they find solution to all the problems. So I'm sure they will find the solution. Maybe they will take education more a kind of a gaming experience, so that they will not be chatting with the kids, because they will learning while they are gaming. So I'm sure they will find solutions for that. But it's important that for us as policymakers, we are aware of this gap that may be widening because of the pandemic and the move to digital, with strong positive impacts in rural areas. And also because, as I also agree with Bertel, that he said that the digital education brings a lot of positive things to the students. The world is going to be digital. The sooner they become digital natives, the better. So this certainly is a strong advantage for them. I was at the beginning a bit reluctant to my kids playing with Minecraft, etc. But I see the value that I mean, this is a skill that they will need in the future. So it's good that they learn, in this case, gaming. No, and I think Minecraft, they are not using in the European school, but I have done some research, and Minecraft has a tool that I think is very much used in some parts of the US. That is it's like the Microsoft Teams, but with the Minecraft environment. So apparently it's more engaging for the kids. I have not tested myself. I have only done some research there, but I think that this kind of innovative solutions will be needed to ensure that the digital benefits, the benefits provided by the digital educations are not surpassed by the negative impact that, of course, as everything in life has something negative as well.
Thank you very much for sharing this and for sharing your private situation too with your kids back there. I want to move on immediately to our next speaker, who is Marianne Sinnes Emplesvåg, She's a member of the Nordic Council Committee on Knowledge and Culture. So, Marianne, now we have heard about the Commission's digital action plan, or parts of it. So is this plan the right way to go in your view? And if so, what steps do the Nordics need to take as a region in order to take a lead on the implementation?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, it's the right way to go, but there are also some challenges that I would like to go through. So
thank you.
First, would like to thank you all for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Nordic countries regarding digital education. Due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, the education system has been suddenly shifted from the conventional classroom environment to electronic devices and online applications. Achieving even more digital education has been a political goal for years. And the COVID-19 pandemic has provided us with the excuse to go totally digital overnight. There is hardly no doubt that digital technology, when deployed right, can fully support the agenda of high quality and inclusive education and training for all learners. In addition to traditional classrooms and methods, learning can take place through simulations and visualization, games, virtual communities, and mixed realities, among others. Technology can facilitate more personalized, flexible, and student-centered learning at all phases and stages of education and training. And it can also increase learning equity for individuals with special needs. However, the type, design, and accessibility of technological tools and platforms may impact directly on whether individuals are included or excluded from learning. In addition, OECD's PISA exercise in 2018 showed that many low-income homes had no access to computers, while Eurostat figures from 2019 indicated that access to broadband internet varies significantly across the EU. Innovative technologies create new learning opportunities, but the skills needed to be an efficient teacher and learner are changing, and we have to be aware of that. The definition of learning become more elusive with the use of network computing and communications technologies. The OECD Teaching and Learning International Survey in 2018 showed that only 39% of educators in the EU felt well prepared for using digital technologies in their daily work. The digital pedagogy teachers use must be adapted if pupils and students are to benefit from this digital transformation. The Nordic countries are quite similar regarding levels of education and digital infrastructure. The corona pandemic has thrown us into the digital world, but we have also learned that there are challenges that must be solved in order to achieve good digital education for all. For instance, a survey among Swedish principals concluded that the distant learning has worked well during the corona pandemic, but it also revealed some challenges. Some pupils are vulnerable to distant learning, particularly pupils with special needs or a stressful home environment. Some pupils also lack the internet access needed to participate in distant learning. We shouldn't think that in the Nordic country, but it's the reality. Similarly, we see from the Norwegian Student Survey 2020 that only 40% agree that good arrangements were made for online teaching, and around 70% experienced that the teaching offered was somewhat reduced after 12th of March. 72% also agreed upon the statement, "I would have learned more if I could have been physically present at the institution." Thus, the COVID-19 crisis shed light on the key enabling factors for effective digital education and training. First, infrastructure is crucial. Internet connectivity and suitable digital equipment, both for learners and educators, are needed. And secondly, teachers and trainers need to be confident and skilled in using digital technology to support their teaching. And last but not least, different pedagogical approaches are needed when teaching online. Research regarding how pupils and students learn must be considered when embracing digital education. One cannot simply take traditional tuition, make it digital, and expect that it will work. We have to look at the learning outcome as well. Based on these experiences, we should develop a Nordic strategy for digitalization of education to follow up on the European Action Plan for Digital Education. The Committee for Knowledge and Culture in the Nordic Council has proposed for the Nordic ministers to initiate an analysis of the consequences of closing school during the pandemic. This can give us new knowledge. Through collaboration and by learning from each other, the Nordics can take a lead in digital education, but the transformation must be done wisely. Thank you.
Thank you. There we go. And again, I apologize for any technical inconvenience that you may have experienced. Thank you very much, Mariana. You too will be available for questions in the upcoming Q&A. I have now tried out my my Q&A function. I think it's working now. So please start raising your hand as our last presentation is coming up now, and we'll be moving into the Q&A session in a short while. Our last presentation of this section is by Sabine Verheyen, Chair of the Committee on Culture and Education at the European Parliament. Mrs. Verheyen, sometimes some people, maybe also a lot of Nordic people, like to see themselves as role models when it comes to the digitalization of the education systems. Now, well, in spite of what we just heard from Marianne Sennes, who could point out some places where we are also lagging behind, do you see us that way as role models?
I think yes. In many ways, you were better prepared because you entered into a digital strategy for education earlier than other regions. Especially the Estonians were for us one of the examples where it was brought quite well forward, but also in Denmark, in Sweden, in Norway, were many things done quite early. And the ongoing health crisis has shaken the education sector to its foundations, and the high quality and inclusive education for all children is an investment in our common future, and digital literacy is an essential factor for that. And that was impacted in the different member states implemented the digital strategies also of the past very differently. The European Commission had already a digital strategy also for education, but it was a very short period where they started. And I'm quite happy that meanwhile the Commission came up with a new digital education action plan that lasts for a longer time, because the shift from offline to online education, from a better digital strategy in education systems cannot be done from now to tomorrow. That is what we made as an experience through the COVID-19 crisis. Due to the pandemic, the educational system encountered massive difficulties. Many schools and educational institutions in Europe had to close down, and the students and teachers had to adapt to an entirely new learning and teaching environment in a very fast time. And the ad hoc digitization during the pandemic has shown that we still face many challenges, and the differences between as well as within the member states. And these differences came quite clear, because we see regional differences. We see differences between more urban or more rural areas. Digital infrastructure plays a big role, but also societal divides were coming up, because during that time, we learned that young people, especially coming from more social difficult backgrounds had more problems to follow up. And what we are facing now is a big gap. It was already said before, a big gap between students, between pupils that were supported well, also from home, that were well equipped, that where the school adopted very fast to the new digital environment, or those who had not this opportunity, who were even lacking digital tools, digital devices to follow the lessons in their school. So,
thank you very much, Mrs. Verlein. That was thank you. That was an interesting view. Thank you. I will move us into the Q&A now, and I'm sure there will be questions directed to you. And I can already see that Annika Lytikainen has raised her hand to ask a question or bring a comment. Annika?
Yes, thank you. Hello, my name is Annika Lytikainen, and I'm a presidium member in the Nordic Youth Council. The Youth Council is, as I guess any of us, worried about the loss of internationalization that students encounter due to the pandemic. We also address this question in our pretty recent resolution about digitalization in higher education. And thus my question to you, probably to Sabine or Marianne, is how can we ensure that students around Europe who now due to the pandemic have lost their opportunity to study trips, to international study, student exchanges or summer schools, will still get chances to develop their language skills, their international competencies, and lifelong networks and friendships around Europe and the Nordics, when mobility in its most traditional meaning, traveling, is restricted?
Thank you for that question, Annika. Very interesting question. This is somewhat parallel with the whole gap that we were talking about before, but still it's a different gap. And Mariana, do you want to try to give an answer to that?
Yes, I'll try. And I think it's a really important question. And we also back here in Norway have raised the question of internationalization at home. And this COVID-19 pandemic has shown us how important that is. And I must just say that the Committee on Knowledge and Culture will discuss a proposition on this particular topic on our next meeting in April, because we think we have to do something, and we specifically focus on the Nordic program Nordplus to see can we make something there that can really look at this this problem, because we don't know when will we be able to travel again. When will students be able to travel across Europe? We hope that it is this summer and that this pandemic will be due, but we should prepare for that it will not. So
can I just ask, following up, because all the virtual meeting rooms and virtual conferences and virtual classrooms and so on and so forth, as Bertel Hårda mentioned before, this is not going to go away. I mean, this is not going to. A lot of this is going to linger after the pandemic situation is over. Do you see a risk that we won't be as international anymore, that we won't meet up and share that, share culture, share new ways of doing things, share education systems and so on and so forth, because we have gotten this option of being all digital?
Of course, you can say that, but I think that we all feel so ready to go out there, and I think the students do as well. So we shouldn't be afraid of that. But I think we have to think on the two issues in parallel, because there are students that will not be able to travel, to go abroad for longer times because they have children or other obligations that make it difficult. So I think we should really, now that we have jumped into this digital age, we should take care of what is good and develop that. But in the same time, we must make students go abroad because they get so much more by staying in another country, cultural.
But you believe this will be solved by the COVID-19 getting under control?
Yeah, I think we have to be aware of it and work with it. Yeah.
Well, thank you for answering this. Mrs. Verheyen, did you have a comment on this question, or should we move on to the next?
No, yes, I have a comment on this because I think also via the Erasmus program, we had the situation at the moment that many students were on their exchange semester, but sitting at home at that time, or sitting in the country where they had the exchange, having online lessons at their universities. There were, in the end, not always travel restrictions, but the social contacts you normally get during an exchange in an Erasmus semester were not able to get in that way. So there is a lack. There is something that has to be kept in mind. But what I see is that the digital exchanges that are possible now will never replace fully the physical exchange. And that was something we also work for in the new Erasmus Plus program, that digital is a part, but not the only part, that we don't move completely to digital exchange, because I think to meet person to person, to meet directly, to have cultural exchange, to live in another environment with another culture, with other societies is very important. And that is one of the main goals also for the Erasmus program, not just to learn the language, not just to learn the content on the university, but also to have intercultural learning possibilities. And I think the digital tools we developed and adapted to at the moment will be a wonderful add-on. It will help to continue contact, to have a continuous exchange also after an Erasmus semester in another country, but it should not replace everything. It is a good opportunity for those who cannot travel physically, but it should not replace completely the physical exchange possibility on an Erasmus program.
Thank you for that. I have two questions. I want to say to the panelists, if you want to talk and if you feel like you want to answer a question, please raise your digital hand. You do so by clicking the raised hand on the bottom of your screen. I have two questions on the Q&A that are a little bit related. One is from Jeppe Vilas Petersen, who says, in the Nordic countries, we have a tradition for a strong focus on the concept of Bildung. I'm sure everybody is familiar with this term. We have it in Danish, and it's kind of difficult to translate into English, actually. What issues and opportunities do you see in this related to an increase in digitalization? And Christina Aaltonen is also circling around this. She says, are the education policies balancing measuring output, meaning tests, exams, data collection, and the such, on one hand, and input, meaning purpose, Bildung, on the other? And then she suggests, why not use the Nordic tradition on democratic dialogue to gather teachers, students, researchers, and politicians for a continuous dialogue on developing solutions to challenges in a short and long term? She is addressing this question to you, Bertel Haarder. Any thoughts on, you mentioned education before, any thoughts on how this very Nordic tradition on emphasis on Bildung as a broad thing can lead us in the right direction and maybe be the antidote to this gap we were addressing before?
Christina Aaltonen has a very good point here.
Yes.
All through my time as education minister, I always fought to avoid that means turn into be ends. I mean, we have to separate between the tools we have. They are digital nowadays, but the end goal of our teaching is, of course, something that has with life education or Bildung or Dannelse, as it is in the Scandinavian language. Of course, and we should keep an eye on yet. We should be very much aware of that. I could talk for a lot longer, but I won't.
I know you can, Bertel, and thank you for making these points. Sabine Verheyen, a comment on this?
Yes, thank you. Coming from Germany, I also know what Bildung means compared to the normal education. And I think that's really a crucial point. But to have this exchange, to have also this dialogue on these broader aspect of education, the Bildungs aspect of education, the Commission is also coming up with having different types of platforms where we can also foster such an exchange on the difficulties, on possibilities. But what is very important for me is also that we not just include how pupils can work with digital tools or get digital skills, but also first we have to think about the teachers. We have to enable teachers to use these in the right form, to have an add-on to their education or Bildung system, to use this in a manner that in the end it's not just having a digital skill, not just know to use digital tools or to have digital competences, but to use them also for the broader aspect of education, for the broader societal and skills aspect.
Well, and then we're back at the need for upgrading the skills of so many Europeans, even beyond the education systems, of course. Marianne Sinnes, comment on this?
Yes, and I would just like to say that I'm happy that the EU's action plan focuses on this because it's an important issue, but I also what worries me is that all research on learning says that the learner has to be motivated, needs to do reflection and have engagement to learn something, and I'm worried that we are not able, as teachers, one is not able to get this connection with students through a screen, and often, as we have seen a problem here in Norway, through a dark screen, because you don't see the students either. And that is an issue that I think we have to address. So when this, now of course it's hard to meet face to face, but I think when this pandemic is over, even though we go into the digital education, we also have to put in some face to face education and to have both. We shouldn't go with both legs into the digital education and forget about this the physical education, because there are important factors there that we need to be aware of. Thanks.
Thank you. Sabine Verheyen, I want to ask you quickly, because somebody's actually asking us to try to define the term Bildung. She's actually asking us to define the Danish term Bildung. I'm not going to call that a Danish term. It's well, it is a German term, and it's an international term. How would you define it?
In Germany, we make the difference. We have the wording Bildung und Ausbildung. On the one hand, Bildung is more holistic. It has to do with social education, with social skills, with ways how to behave in the society towards others, and also have knowledge. You have knowledge and the other skills. That together is Bildung. The other thing is just this, what we in Germany call Ausbildung. Then you get skills, you get knowledge for your job, for the strict education, but also to set up social competences, to have a holistic education approach. It's difficult to describe a German terminus with English words that never fit perfectly to that.
Yes, of course, because there's a reason that we use there's a reason we all use the German term. I want to say though, it's an interesting question, because sometimes you will have to operationalize this, because I mean it is kind of occult somehow when you talk about it, because what is it exactly? But how do you actually talk about it? We if you want to make projects, do legislation around it, provide Bildung for a generation, well, how do you define it then? Because that requires more firm definitions, doesn't it?
Yeah, that is why we have then different termini for this. We talk about social education, we talk about emotional education, we talk about education in maths, in STEM, in arts, in all these things. So it is set up with much more words and much more descriptions. Yes. So in our papers, when we work in English, we normally have a setup of different parts of this Bildungsterminus, and I think there are more words necessary to describe what we want in English legislative text. But what is always clear is that we always search for the holistic approach in education, so that we meet the needs. And that is what we always say, also, that it is necessary not just to have a digital education and digital skills, but also haptical education, to learn how to use your fingers, to learn how to paint a picture, and not just with a pen on a screen, or just with a screen, but in real life, and also to have these social interactions with others, to take care for others in a class, in a group. That is also part of education, and that's necessary also to have a functioning society in the end.
Thank you for that. I want to say to Mila Vulchanova, we have seen your question, and we will. I will bring it up shortly. Bertel Haarder, you've asked for the floor, and I will let you in on this talk on Bildung.
I can agree on everything that was said about Bildung, except that I would add that Bildung has also to do with education in culture and history, one's own culture and history, but also other people's culture and history. It also has to do with formation of character and ethics. So it's a broad context. It is about how to become a person able to live with other people and able to see himself or herself as part of a larger context.
Thank you for clarifying that. I couldn't have made such a precise definition myself. Thank you for that, Bertel. I promised Mila Vulchanova I would get back to her question, and I will do so now. She writes as follows: I lead a Horizon 2020 large-scale project, e-LADA, on language development in the digital age. We are addressing both advantages and disadvantages of digital tools and social robots for children. We will be preparing guidelines for policymakers and education experts on this. One good example is the use of tablets for literacy instruction, which is not always beneficial. Any comments on this? This is another example of how digital can bring us together, but can also provide gaps. Any comments on Mila Vulchanova's comment here? No, we'll move on to the next one. Rina, yeah. Sabine Verheyen, did you have a comment on
that point? Yes, that is what I meant with also haptical skills. If you just work digital, especially in very young ages, the competences you normally set up via the traditional analog way of education, with painting, with writing with your hand, with using other tools in a small distance or in a bigger distance, is very important for the development of physical skills, but also for the development of mental skills. And I think that must always be brought in a balance when we talk about digitization. Digitization in education cannot be everything, but we need the right balance between the traditional education tools and traditional education methods and the new digital education methods, because we need both. We don't need just the one or just the other, and that is has to be balanced out in a very careful way, so that the competences we need also in future out of the analog world are still available also in future.
It's certainly true that many times a lot of discussions about education and the education system in this part of the world, in Denmark in particular, will end up by everybody saying we need Bildung, but it's not very often very clear what how that is supposed to be operationalized. And maybe this is what this person who's chosen to be anonymous is asking about. She is saying, how is it possible to create a quality vocational education available to all according to the demand on the labor market? So that would be a practice education. Anybody want to address that? I mean, if it's an education in according to the demand on the labor market, a practice education. How can we do that during the current circumstances, Sabine Verheyen, and in the future? Oh, you forgot to unmute, Sabine.
Again, sorry for that, but coming from Germany, we have, I think, a very good functioning dual education system where we develop the education system always together, the VET education together with the companies, so that it always fits to the needs of the labor market, because the companies are always included into the education system we have. Knowing that it's not easy to transform that to everything, we want to set up as a European Union these excellent centers for VET training, where we can have cooperation and exchange between different VET education systems, and to exchange also best practices and come out with proposals for best fit VET education to the different markets and different situations we have in the member states. And that is part of the new Erasmus Plus program.
Thank you for that. And before moving on, I would just want to say there's a very interesting chat going on in the chat. So please check that out before we pass the floor to Vera Simovska. Vera, for a comment? No. All right. Okay, we'll move on to the next question over here. For those, here's a long comment on the whole Bildung or Dannelse, as it's called in the Scandinavian languages. Lots of that. We have a lot of questions on the chat. Is the starting point to getting to the core of what we see as the role of the school and educators here? How is it possible to create the same question? Vera, there you are. I think we're experiencing sound trouble again. There sure has been a ghost in the sound systems of this session. I deeply apologize for that. That has been quite disturbing. Okay, so I will close off that question now, since we are tired of sound trouble now. I think what I would like to do now is I want to pass the floor now. I want to thank our panelists for living with the sound trouble, and also, yeah, Vera is writing that she has problems with her microphone. Yes, Vera. Everybody seems to have that today. I want to take in Angelica Bengtsson now, because she has agreed kindly to do our closing remarks for today. So Angelica is the vice chair of the Committee for Knowledge and Culture here at the Nordic Council that we have heard from before. I certainly hope we have you with us, Angelica. Are you there?
I am here. Hopefully you can hear me and see me.
We can both hear and see you, and you're going through loud and clear.
Perfect. Thank you, Mette, for moderating these 2 hours. You've been doing an excellent job, so thank you very much for that. And I've been writing so much, so my hand been cramping. So thank you so much for all the knowledge and all the ideas. At least I have a lot to work on after this session. This webinar has paid attention to a very topical subject, digitalization. Do we have a digital age or not? And are we ready for this digitalization? Ready or not, here it is. And at least last year has showed it. And we talked a lot about the social media, Facebook, Google, attending. And I think this topic we will see much more in this coming year. What is happening in Australia is really interesting, and I'm really looking forward to see how this debate is going to be here in Europe, and how we are going to deal with Facebook and big tech, like Facebook and Google. The Committee of Culture and Education has worked with a commentation about how much of an impact the digital teaching has made on our pupils. We want to make a comparative analysis to look and be made in our Nordic countries, so we will learn about the consequences of the shutdowns in the schools. We cannot allow this happening again, and we cannot take education for granted. We need to keep working hard to continue on having a high level of education and building that we were talking about the last here in this last session. The pandemic has also showed the need of us, the Nordic Council and the European Parliament, how we can and should be cooperating better than we are doing today. The Nordic Council has shown that we can put back border barriers in a short matter of time. We need more of this in our future. And that wouldn't be possible if we didn't have this good cooperation and connection and communication between our countries. So I would like to say a big thank you for all the participations, for sharing your thoughts and knowledge to us. I really appreciate it a lot, and I know a lot of us will be working on this further on. And thank you again, Mette, for moderating this webinar. And hopefully we'll be able to have this kind of seminar and not webinar in the near future. I look forward to that. And until that, take care and stay safe, everyone. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I also want to thank you. And interestingly, this kind of ended up where we started. Morten Lykkegaard was pointing to the values, the values, the human-centric values, and maybe Europe, the Nordic and Europe, has a certain role to play in the current development and the current digitalization and the vast digitalization that we're seeing this year. Maybe it is our job, our designated job, to take care of all these values with Bildung and every other human-centric approach in mind. So with that, thank you so much for participating today. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for participating in the chat. Please check it out. There's a lot of interesting question and answering going on in there. See you soon.